Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome to the Film Brits podcast. I'm your host Trilby, the buddy, the elf of film criticism, and today on Christmas Eve is the penultimate Film Brits of the year, or possibly the final Film Brits of the year, depending on how much I can get off of my arse after Boxing Day after having literally consumed an entire pig. So thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Hopefully you are on your way to see family or friends if you're listening to this in the car or on a bus or walking or something like that, because of course Christmas is a time to be with people, and I don't want to be incredibly cheesy, but my opening segment, Share the Love, I'm just going to be really cliche and cheesy and just say share the love with whoever you are spending the holiday seasons with, whether it's friends, family, relatives, distant cousins, whoever it is you are seeing this this Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, just this time of year. Just make sure that you let everybody know that they are loved and that you appreciate everything that they do. And yeah, it's cliche, but Christmas it's not just about the presents, it's not just about the turkey, it's not just about the pigs in blankets, it's not about the veggie roast if you are a vegetarian like my girlfriend, who will not be having turkey or pigs in blankets this Christmas, which I'm incredibly sorry for her. But it is just about spending time with family members, and the true spirit of Christmas is just maybe getting somebody a gift or a token of your appreciation to just let them know that you care about them, that you appreciate them, and that they are in your thoughts, they are in your hearts. That is the main reason for Christmas. It's the main reason for giving. It's the main reason for presents, even if it is just a small token. And of course, this is a time of year where some people are unable to be with any family members. If they're unable to be with friends, they may be spending Christmas alone. And I'm going to get all serious here for a minute, but I read an article the other day, and there's a charity in London, I think it's called Shelter, and what they do is that they look after homeless people on the streets of London, and there's an estimated 180,000 people who just are part of Shelter, who just use Shelter, who work, who are in jobs, who are in relative full-time employment, but are still living rough, who are still living on the streets, who don't have a roof above their heads, who don't have family to see, whether it's like through no fault of their own, whether or not it's just the fact that they cannot afford a London accommodation, if they can't share a flat, if they can't bunk with anybody, just whatever the situation is. It could be a relationship breakdown, it could be somebody losing their job or losing a family member, losing their only means of survival and just being stuck on the street. And I think it's just absolutely depressing that there is such a large amount of people in what is considered a first world country, the UK, England, who are still working, who pull your pints, who deliver your pizzas, who work at your Starbucks or eat or Pret or whatever, who at the end of the day they don't go to a home after serving your drink or making your meal or pulling your pint. They go to a shelter, or they go on the streets. So what I'm going to suggest, if you have the means to, obviously don't pay beyond your means, but it's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be donating to crisis.org.uk, which is a homeless organisation. And they've got a campaign, it's called Crisis at Christmas. And what you can do is you can donate £22 and 32 pence. It's something random and specific like that, but you can donate that amount. And what happens is that at one of their crisis organisations, they're based in Edinburgh, Newcastle, Birmingham, Coventry, Warwickshire, and London. And what they do is that on Christmas Day they support homeless people. They give them a shower to freshen up and just feel human again. They get clean clothes. They get 3 hot meals, including a Christmas dinner. They get a health check and treatment from a doctor, an optician, and a dentist. And they also get an introduction to Crisis's year-round services for training and support for the future. They find out what circumstances allowed them to be living rough, or what forced them to live rough, and help them get through that. And for £22 and 32 pence, I think that's just an incredible gift that you could give somebody. And if you're unable to do that, if you do have a spare couple of hours or something on Christmas Day, you could go to one of their centres in Edinburgh, Newcastle, Birmingham, etc. Go on their website to find out, and you could volunteer as well, or you could even sponsor somebody to volunteer if you can't make it. It's incredibly flexible. And this is incredibly cheesy, especially considering that this is a Patreon-funded podcast. But I do recommend you do donate to crisis.org.uk. I'm going to be paying £22.32 in order to reserve a place at a Crisis at Christmas location somewhere across the country. And it is just one of those things that, because charity donations go up around Christmas, because it is just about helping other people, those less fortunate than yourselves, and if that doesn't represent Christmas, I don't really know what does. But that's crisis.org.uk, and you can find out way more information there. So let's talk about something incredibly superfluous, and let's talk about movie news, okay? Let's talk about all of the recent trailers that have been dropping, because last week I did talk about many trailers such as Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, The Fate of the Furious, and all these other ones, but within like the day that the podcast went live on Patreon or it was on YouTube, a load more trailers dropped. So I thought if a few more drop, then we can make this trailer bonanza part 2, and lo and behold, a few of them did. I'm going to be talking about 6 trailers. There were a few of them that were trailers for movies coming out over the next couple of months, like The Cure for Wellness, which looks trippy as hell, as well as Patriots Day. But I think that those are a little bit too recent. Let's talk more about summer. There's going to be one movie that I will be talking about that comes out in January, but that's just because it looks so ridiculous, and I just want to know what on earth your thoughts on the trailer are. But first, we're going to be talking about the Emoji Movie, which is going to be released by Sony in August 2017, and it got its first teaser trailer today, and oh my god, that dislike bar. Yeah, the Emoji Movie is basically trying to be, say, Toy Story or Wreck-It Ralph, where it turns out there's an entire world inside of your smartphone, and the emojis are actually real personalities and people, kind of like Inside Out, but in your phone, where the meh emoji is just a really indifferent person voiced by Stephen Wright. Or there's also the poop emoji. There's James Corden voicing the high five emoji. And there's TJ Miller as Gene, who is an outsider emoji who can express multiple emotions and have multiple expressions. And oh my god, this sounds the absolute worst. I say last year, it's still 2016, earlier this year, my Movie Mania co-host, Bandit Incorporated, started a hashtag called hashtag Sony is Cancer in response to all the Ghostbusters stuff. Now, I don't believe that hashtag Sony is Cancer was an appropriate hashtag for the Ghostbusters movie, especially when there was, say, Resident Evil Independence Day Resurgence, which was a much more calculated, much more cynical cash grab sequel reboot or whatever than Ghostbusters was. But hey, I think with a movie like this is basically just going through the very bottom of the barrel in terms of what Sony could possibly be making a movie for. And I think it's really, really telling when in this teaser, Stephen Wright voicing the meh emoji. I think that it's a decent idea having an incredibly indifferent person try and express excitement for a film, but I think the joke is the concept of an emoji movie is way too corporate and cynical in order to pull that joke sincerely. And I think the fact that the meh emoji says our first movie is really, really telling that they want this to become a franchise. Because Sony basically wants everything they make to be a franchise since they've lost Spider-Man. They're on the cusp of losing James Bond if they don't outbid all of the movie studios for the rights back. It's kind of like Pokemon, the first movie, except when that movie came out in America, the anime was quite a few months ahead of the US dub, so they probably could have foreseen that there was a second or a third movie on the cards, so they actually could have said Pokemon the first movie and genuinely meant it, and they knew that they could follow through. And if this is going to be a case where the Emoji Movie makes way more money than, say, Kubo and the Two Strings and ends up getting multiple sequels and is just absolutely terrible in every way, I might just hate life, because there's nothing funny in this trailer, there's nothing really inventive at all, it just seems so cynical and so played out. Like, I understand what they were going for when was it the ice cream emoji, who no idea who voices them, but I kind of recognize the voice, was gonna mention Poop's name, and then Poop is just around the corner like, oh, go on, say it. It's like, it's not a funny joke, it just seems like the absolute worst thing ever. And when people say, oh, Trilby, what's your least anticipated film? I'm not a fan of that question, because if I was to take that question literally, my least anticipated film would probably be a movie that I have never heard of, a movie I have no idea of its awareness of, so I have no anticipation for it. But in terms of most dreaded films, until I see another trailer that proves me otherwise, I think the Emoji Movie may be my most dreaded film of 2017, next to, say, Sing or 50 Shades Darker. However, I will say that Sing has been getting pretty good reviews, and I'm not going to lie, once I heard that Seth MacFarlane was voicing a mouse who does Frank Sinatra covers, and I heard his cover of My Way, I kind of thought, okay, the movie might be worth seeing if they do that song really well in the film, because the cover was pretty good, and I think Seth MacFarlane is a really awesome singer. I just hate talent shows, and I think it's just as cynical making a talent show animal cast movie than it is an Emoji Movie, although apparently Sing is pretty good, so who knows how that's going to wind up. I'm not particularly enthused, but the Emoji Movie, it just seems like I think with the Emoji Movie, so what Sony would do is that they would make the marketing campaign first and then make the movie afterwards, which is just a terrible way to reverse engineer a success, but it's probably going to work for them. It's probably going to make $1 billion and become the highest grossing animated film ever, and it just makes me very, very sad. Another trailer that came out this past week was was a trailer for the animated film The Boss Baby, which is coming from DreamWorks Animation. And I think with DreamWorks, what they've done recently is that because of the lack of success for Turbo, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and also Home made money, but they were expecting it to be a much bigger hit, and same for Kung Fu Panda 3. And there was also Rise of the Guardians. I think what they're doing is that they're really sort of downscaling. What they would like to be doing is releasing 2 to 3 movies a year, but in the very near future they're going to be spacing them out a lot more because the budget's being stretched a lot thinner. And next year what they've got is that they've got the Captain Underpants, which we've received very little news about. The movie was going to be released in March, but then they gave that release date to The Boss Baby, and there's been practically no news about it, so who knows if that's even going to happen. But we do have a trailer for The Boss Baby, which is basically a Donald Trump biopic, where you have a businessman who is probably not very good at his job and is basically just a fast-talking, terrible human being who has temper tantrums, who probably shits his pants on several occasions, and that's basically the joke. This seems like another attempt at trying to reverse engineer a marketing campaign first and then making a movie afterwards. The trailer was full of a lot of cliches, and I think while it may have its heart in the right place in terms of it being taking the idea of having these two siblings and they are fighting for attention of the parents, and they wind up actually caring for each other. You can predict the plot just from watching the trailer, and hopefully the movie does have its heart in the right place. It actually plays it quite earnestly. Who knows if that's going to be the case, but this just does seem like another pretty cliche trailer. Alec Baldwin, I think, is a good choice for the baby boss, for the Boss Baby, but I think that, say, casting Jimmy Kimmel as the dad or the stepdad to the Boss Baby, and Miles is the other son. I think that it seems like, Jimmy Kimmel's huge, and if we get him to be in a movie, he'll promote the movie all year round, and he has a huge following, and loads of people watch him on TV, so let's get that in. I don't know, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not dreading it. There's nothing in the trailer that makes me loathe going to see it come opening weekend in March, but this is just something that I feel like I'm going to have to maybe grit my teeth and just say, yeah, let's just watch it and review it and see how we get along, and hopefully it's good, because DreamWorks, I will give them credit for being a company that is able to turn terrible concepts or ideas that feel like they should never ever work and actually making them really endearing, like Rise of the Guardians, or How to Train Your Dragon, or Kung Fu Panda. These are ideas that probably may have actually turned out terrible in the wrong hands, but DreamWorks was somehow able to make it work. And even some of their lesser films, like, say, Turbo, The Croods and Home, there's nothing really objectionable about them. I don't think that they've actually made an outright bad film since let's say Shrek Forever After, or Madagascar 2. Because the first two Madagascar films just aren't very good. So let's say Shrek Forever After, maybe Shrek the Third is probably their last outright bad film, and that's a pretty good streak for a film that for a film company that regularly makes like 2 or 3 releases a year. So let's see how that goes. Now, to the other end of the spectrum completely is the first proper true trailer for Christopher Nolan's historical epic Dunkirk. And this is the first time that we're going to be seeing Christopher Nolan tackle a real-life subject matter. We've seen his take on the comic book movie, we've seen his take on cerebral narratives such as Inception, and we've seen his take on sci-fi with Interstellar. And after Interstellar, we had a filmmaker who was... basically, Interstellar was meant to be made by Steven Spielberg, and then once he couldn't do it, Christopher Nolan was given the director's chair. And I think that transition of power really, really shows, because Interstellar is trying to be a really emotional film, where it's going for a Steven Spielberg type ending with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or possibly something along the lines of E.T. But Christopher Nolan is not an emotional filmmaker. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad filmmaker. Emotional and good or bad, they don't necessarily equate, but it just means that for a film like Interstellar, he was completely out of his depth. I don't think that... when I think of Christopher Nolan, I think of some asexual being who can't quite comprehend emotions or comedy, and I think that's why many of the jokes in The Dark Knight Rises fall flat, and also why the emotional ending of Interstellar just completely it kind of sucks the life out of that film. But for something like Dunkirk, which is he has real inspiration to draw from, he has the real event, he has the real historical documents, and he has the real lives to interpret. I think this is going to be a really fitting combination. And for Dunkirk, the trailer was harrowing. Like, the shot of the guy just walking into the water, seemingly committing suicide because there's no hope on that beach. It's haunting stuff. And Christopher Nolan is an incredibly practical filmmaker. And while there are obviously going to be CGI planes or a couple of CGI explosions, maybe some green screen here and there, watching this trailer, at least, you get the feeling that those boats are really on the water. Those hundreds of thousands of men are really on that beach. They're really in the water, they're really on the boats, and the real explosions. And I think that type of approach is really going to work for a film like Dunkirk. And we could be experiencing a war movie in the vein of Saving Private Ryan, and possibly even in that quality. And I'm also just intrigued knowing how Christopher Nolan does tackle a real-life story with real-life source material to draw from. And I think that it could be a match made in heaven. And there wasn't much Harry Styles in the trailer, so who knows if he's even going to be giving a good performance. But I like the idea of Mark Rylance seemingly just playing a normal guy who... he's on a fishing boat nearby, and he hears that all these soldiers on the beaches of Dunkirk need to be evacuated, so he and a few other sailboats try and rescue them. And it was a massive operation in 1940 or 1941, where like 400,000 men were on this beach, and tens of thousands they had to be evacuated by boat over the course of 2 weeks. This was not like a one and done thing. This operation, this evacuation, took almost 2 weeks to accomplish. That's a massive thing. And I'm also just wondering how Christopher Nolan is going to be playing with that time, if he's able to get across how grueling it must have been to be those French, Belgian and British troops cut off from the rest of their forces, and just trying to escape through the only means that they possibly could, through the water. And I think that this trailer, it shows that everything is on the right path. This film, I was looking forward to Dunkirk, but this trailer really solidified it and definitely making my top 5 most anticipated films of 2017, unless like another trailer comes along and knocks it off that spot. And this looks like a must-see film in IMAX. This looks pretty insane. And Warner Brothers clearly have a lot of faith in this film, because the Hollywood Reporter ran a story saying that Christopher Nolan made a deal with Warner Brothers where he would receive a $20 million directing salary plus 20% of the box office gross, which would make him, it would be one of the most rewarding deals for a director since Peter Jackson got the same deal for directing King Kong in 2005 after making Warner Brothers literally billions of dollars with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he'd do so again with the Hobbit trilogy. But what Christopher Nolan is in Warner Brothers' good books at the moment, because even though Interstellar was not the billion-dollar film they were obviously hoping it would be, with Inception, an original property, and with the Dark Knight trilogy, he's a guy who they really, really want helping them out on a regular basis, especially when they're trying to expand their DC cinematic universe. They'll always want him just in the corner of the room during the read through of the script. They'll always want a couple of notes from Christopher Nolan, just finding out how they can improve their cinematic universe. That approach doesn't seem to be working for them right now, but after making billions of dollars with the Dark Knight trilogy, that's what they're going to be wanting. It's a formula that is working for them, and I wish them all the best with it. Now, the next trailer is for Despicable Me 3, and what's strange, I have a weird love-hate relationship with Illumination Entertainment. After just making absolute trash with the Lorax, I was tempted to just write off the company. Despicable Me was pretty good. I did enjoy it quite a bit, and I think it holds up. It's a pretty good animated film. Then they made the Lorax, which was just the most corporate, terrible piece of filmmaking ever. And then they made Despicable Me 2, which was just as good. It was a really good sequel. And then they made Minions, which was just phenomenally mediocre. And then they made The Secret Life of Pets, which is just phenomenally mediocre. And then they made Sing, which I'm told is good, but I will probably find phenomenally mediocre. The only good films that Illumination Entertainment have been delivering consistently is the Despicable Me franchise. So I couldn't care less about the Minions. They're good supporting players in Gru's story. But them having their own film, it was just so boring. It was just so mediocre, and there was nothing to it. With Despicable Me 3, I think that there's potential here, and I think that this first trailer, I'm surprised they didn't focus as much on the Minions as they did, because Despicable Me 1 and Despicable Me 2, they made quite a lot of money. They did really, really well at the box office, but Minions made $1 billion. Minions is their most successful film. So you'd think with the Despicable Me 3, they'd have the Minions right front and centre, that they'd be everywhere. They barely have an appearance in this first debut teaser trailer. They only appear at the very end, and seemingly have very little dialogue. So I'm kind of amazed at the amount of restraint that they had for this first trailer, and that it was just essentially an action set-piece film, presumably early on in the movie, where Steve Carell as Gru and Kristen Wiig as Lucy Wilde have got to fight Trey Parker. I didn't even know Trey Parker, who's one of the co-creators with Matt Stone for South Park, and also co-directing The Book of Mormon and Cannibal the Musical and all of this other stuff. I didn't even know he was in this film until the trailer came out, so that was a huge surprise. He's playing Balthazar Bratt, who's a former child star who becomes obsessed with the character that he played in the 1980s and becomes bent on world domination. I think that's an interesting idea, and I think Trey Parker has the eccentric vocal chops to pull off that character. Because Trey Parker and Matt Stone, they voice so many characters in that franchise. It is absolutely insane. Let me just find, who does Trey Parker... Okay, Trey Parker in South Park voices Stan, Cartman, Mr. Garrison, Satan, Randy, who else? And Big Gay Al. Because all of these other characters... It's insane just who he voices and how many... it's kind of akin to The Simpsons, where they I think Harry Shearer voices 7 or 8 characters, and that it's good budget wise because you don't have to hire as many actors, have as many contracts and such. But Trey Parker's a genuinely talented vocal performer. So as for Despicable Me 3, yeah, the trailer was pretty good. It was alright. I think it was funny to have Gru singing along Happy Birthday when he was stuck floating by the window. I thought that was actually a pretty clever subversion of the joke. I think that Steve Carell's Gru is the lifeblood of this franchise, and I think it's not the Minions, it's Steve Carell's Gru, and I think he does a really good job. And basically, the Despicable Me franchise would be half of what it was if it wasn't for Steve Carell. So, yeah, colour me mildly excited for Despicable Me 3. I need to see more of the film, but I think if it's just as good as Despicable Me 1 or 2, then we're in good territory here. As long as it's better than Minions, then yeah, Illumination Entertainment could be in my good books again. With a company like Illumination, they're making so much money on these films. They could make anything they wanted, and I think it's with that what they're choosing to make in terms of their original properties outside of their Despicable Me Minions cash grabs or like confident money makers. They know Despicable Me film is going to make a lot of money, but then they make something original like Secret Life of Pets, and it's just so nothing. There's no creative spark in that film, none at all. And when I watch the trailers for Sing, it just seems like I'm going on a completely different tangent, but with a trailer for Sing, you just watch the scenes and it just looks like a normal human world. There's nothing unique, like there's no different like visual spark there, or no inspired touch for how these animals inhabit this world. Like Zootropolis basically had to design an entire world to accommodate these animals. Sing is basically, it's our world, but there's animals, and there's no unique touch there. And I don't know, I think Illumination Entertainment still have to find their special. If we're going to be quoting the Lego movie, they have to find their special. And I think that Despicable Me and the Minions franchise, it's not quite it. And their original stuff that they can do as, say, risky projects, that's not it either. They need to find their niche, and I don't know if that's going to be coming in the next few years, because they're making The Grinch in 2018, and after the Lorax, I do not trust them with the Dr. Seuss license, and they're making Secret Life of Pets 2 in the same year. And that's basically just going to be Toy Story 2. Because, you know, Secret Life of Pets was basically Toy Story 1, so I don't know. But let's talk about a trilogy of trailers. I'll be very brief here. Blade Runner 2049, John Wick Chapter 2, and XXX Return of Xander Cage, or XXX Reactivated, depending on what territory you are watching the film in. Right, this is going to be awkward, and I have a bit of a confession here. I have never seen Blade Runner. I have never seen John Wick, and I have never seen the original XXX. So these three trailers looked alright, looked pretty good, but I'm assuming a lot of it is lost on me for having not seen the original film. Blade Runner, I thought there was a really atmospheric trailer. I think that Denis Villeneuve is the type of director who's not just going to be doing a cash grab sequel after Arrival or Sicario or Prisoners. I loved Prisoners, like every fibre of my being. Prisoners is amazing. I think he's the type of filmmaker who you don't get to make a paint-by-numbers sequel, and I think he's a really good choice to tackle a property or an aesthetic like Blade Runner. I've not seen the film, I've watched many scenes, and I basically know the aesthetic or the plot of it, even if I haven't seen the film in its totality. I'm planning on fixing that before this film comes out in October 2017, but it was a really atmospheric trailer. I loved the colours, I loved the music. I think with Harrison Ford returning to Indiana Jones, returning to Star Wars, and now returning to Blade Runner, I think we're getting a sense that the cocaine pile that he bought with his Star Wars riches is running a little bit low, so that could be why he's coming back for these sequels. But if he's able to bring the same amount of enthusiasm he did here for, say, Han Solo in The Force Awakens, yeah, we could be seeing a return to form for the actor here. He was amazing in 42. I just would like to see him tackle more material like that as opposed to revisiting these roles. But who knows? I've not watched the original Blade Runner, so let's see how that goes. As for John Wick, I've not seen John Wick 1. Once again, I know I have to see John Wick. I've heard amazing things about it. It might be a bit too hyped up for me, so I might find it pretty boring if I watch it now. But yeah, John Wick Chapter 2, it looks fun. It looks a lot. It looks basically, it looks like John Wick is the type of action hero who is too awkward and not charismatic enough to have the witty one-liners, but that is part of the charisma. Like lines that should be like killer Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando or Last Action Hero lines. They feel like lines that should be delivered like that, but because it's Keanu Reeves, he can't quite pull it off, but it's done in a way that makes it feel subversive and it becomes charming in its entirely new way. I'm not criticising Keanu Reeves or the film or the trailer or whatever. I think that's just what the tone is going for if the trailers are to be believed. So I'm going to be watching John Wick 1 before I watch Chapter 2. I know everyone's really, really excited about this, so let's see how it pans out. I'm just looking forward to watching these films back to back. And we also have XXX Return of Xander Cage. Fun fact, Ruby Rose is in both John Wick Chapter 2 and XXX Return of Xander Cage. So that's a thing that's happening. Not seen XXX. This basically seems like a Vin Diesel passion project that nobody else cares about. Kind of like The Last Witch Hunter. Or the recent Riddick movie from 2013. It feels like Universal Was it no, Universal aren't even making. Okay, so it's Paramount. So Paramount basically just looked at Vin Diesel making billions of dollars with the Fast and Furious franchise and thought, okay, we want him on our team. We want him making movies with us. We want him to have a good relationship with our studio as well as Universal, who do the Fast franchise. Let's just. What do you want to make? What do you want to make, Vin Diesel? And he says, I want to make Triple X. And then they say, green light Triple X, and we'll have motorcycles that can ski across the water, and we'll get Samuel L. Jackson and Donnie Yen and Ruby Rose and all these other. Let's just whatever you wanna ski on the waves on a bike, go for it. You wanna punch somebody to a Christmas tune in a TV spot that was recently released, do the whatever. You wanna breaking a gun in half with your bare knee, just do it. We just want you to make movies for us. I predict this being a bit of a bomb. I'm interested in what the budget will be, because the film's been shot in 3D as well. So who knows if it will even have a substantial 3D ticket intake. But let's just see how it goes, I guess. I don't know. I don't really hold much hopes. I think the most interesting part about this film is that it's the first movie made from Revolution Studios. Since 2007 with Across the Universe and the Waterhorse Legend of the Deep, because I have no idea what happened to that company. I think after Waterhorse they made a couple of sitcoms, and then they were bought by another studio, and then they were just had nothing to do for 7 years in the film department, and now all of a sudden they're just making Triple X Return of Xander Cage. I want to see a Parks and Recreation or Office style sitcom based around that production studio, and knowing what was happening during that 7-year gap between Waterhorse and Triple X Return of Xander Cage. And that would be funny, and I want to see how that happens something has fell off my desk. I want to see how that happens, maybe as a YouTube series. We'll see how that goes. But that's all of the trailers that dropped this past week. Who knows if something big's going to drop on Christmas Eve or Boxing Day or Christmas Day or whatever order you have your Christmas celebrations in. So let's do the penultimate or possibly final, depending on how much I eat on Boxing Day, Patreon questions. I'm not going to be doing a lightning round. I'm not going to be doing Facebook or Twitter questions because I have somewhere to be. Basically, between the 23rd and the 25th of December, I'm going to be doing at least 12 hours of driving, because I have family to see on one side of the country, and then on the other side of the country I have girlfriend's family to see, so a lot of family obligations. See how it goes. So first question comes from Anne Neubauer, who she says, during action movies I find myself tuning out during battle scenes. I get bored during action sequences in superhero movies. Often these are great movies with fantastic effects and exquisite costuming, great production, captivating stories, etc. So I should appreciate these movies, but they have so very much action. Those were capitalized because, so you know, it overwhelms me. It's a matter of taste in my case, I think. However, do you see a trend? Do you think action movies have become increasingly sensational with stunts and effects, sometimes pushing aside more cerebral aspects of storytelling over the years? I'm sympathetic to your plight, Anne Neubauer, and I think that it depends ultimately on the franchise. I think with something like, say, Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice or Suicide Squad, it's not so much the fact that the action overwhelms me or anything, it's just that when it goes on for so long and it's so elaborate but you don't care, I think that's the worst part, because then you sort of appreciate the thousands of man-hours that it took to render these effects, to choreograph these stunts and plan, do basically all of the safety regulations, all of that paperwork. Now, whenever I watch like an action scene in, say, The Raid or let's say Fast and Furious, I just think how many safety forms had to be filled in. It's a curse of having worked on TV and film projects, just knowing how much health and safety is involved in stuff like that. So that overwhelms me. But when you have, say, the end fight of Man of Steel, I can appreciate it technically, but when it's just so superfluous and when they're clearly not doing much damage to each other, Superman and Zod, it doesn't feel like it has a lot of weight. But then you've got Batman v Superman when they're fighting each other, and their motivations are muddy, make no sense, and ultimately the fight's quite short and disappointing. But then you have something like Captain America Civil War, and there are two terrific action set pieces in that film, but they work for very different reasons. And the first one is the airport sequence, which is obviously these are awesome, fun characters with great personalities, and you appreciate the technical skill in how all of the different aspects of the fight can work so well with each other. Like, there's I can't remember exactly which character. I think it's War Machine is fighting Giant Man, and then as that battle is going on in the sky, the camera then pans down to Hawkeye and Black Panther fighting, and then it's their moment. It's just a really clever way of it, how it seems, and it makes it seem very seamless and really well tied together. And it's just an incredibly fun, laugh-out-loud spectacle. And then you get to the ending of Civil War, which is where it plays its emotional card. And while the fight itself between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers and the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, is not an incredibly enthralling action sequence on its own when you just look at the choreography or the set, the action and everything going on. But what makes me care is the fact that I like these characters and I don't want to see them fighting. You've grown attached to Tony Stark for 8 years, you've grown attached to Captain America for 6 years, you've watched them through numerous movies, and you know that they're both good people at their heart, at their core, but they're fighting over this very reasonable argument, and that one side is not wrong, one side is not. They're both equally valid, and you just want to see them work stuff out. But that's the thing about Civil War and everything happening under the emotions of that story, is that these are misgivings and these are personal hang-ups that you just don't get over right away. These characters, while they do still respect each other by the end, they're not going to be friends immediately. This is going to take some healing. But when it comes to I think it's not the case of just having too much action. You just need to care about the action that's happening. Like, for example, in a movie like Dredd, there are a couple of really inventive action set pieces in the slow motion. What I remember about that film is just the great satire. Like, that it's built into the very core and the very foundations of Judge Dredd as a comic book character in his universe in City 17. I think that's what it is, and the Peachtree's apartment block. And just seeing them make it's more the trials and tribulations and just seeing these characters inhabit this world that makes it interesting, as opposed to the huge action set pieces, which there aren't really that many of. And with Judge Dredd is portraying a Donald Trump dystopian future, and seeing Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson inhabit that world is what's interesting about that. You don't need the great action set pieces, although they're just a garnish. The slow-mo, the sequence where other judges who are being paid off by Mama come in to take out Dredd and Anderson. It's just clever thematic set pieces that aren't necessarily action driven, but they're story and they're driven by atmosphere. That's what I appreciate about a movie like, say, Dredd. And other action sequences that I do appreciate are, say, something in Spider-Man 2 where there's no, like, what's happening in that fight in Spider-Man 2 on the train is that, yes, it's full of special effects and it was a massive undertaking production-wise, but they're not destroying half of the city. They're not completely wrecking there's not a massive body count. It takes place on a single moving vehicle, and there's a lot of momentum and movement, but there's not a lot of destruction. So I think it's not a massive sensory overload, but you still get the thrill, you still get the excitement and the speed of the set piece, and that's one reason that I love it. And a lot of action set pieces can just be so ridiculous that they're funny, like the train sequence in Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers. And I think that what you get with action set pieces like, say, in the Fast and Furious or the Triple X Return of Xander Cage, if you're just watching that trailer, is that they're going deliberately for ridiculous. And I think if you're on that wavelength, then you're probably going to have a fun time. But I think it kind of helps to know what you're getting into. If you're after really intense dramatic action set pieces or something interesting character-wise, you don't really watch a film like Fast and Furious or Triple X Return of Xander Cage. I think it's just about knowing what you're getting in for and knowing if you're in the right mood for it. If you want to be in that mood to just have not necessarily turn your brain off, but just have a good time, then you watch a film like The A-Team, where they are literally flying a tank, which is a lot of fun in my personal opinion. Or if you want something a bit more mood-driven, you watch something like, say, Dredd. Or who knows, maybe what's that film that, like, maybe something like Passengers. Who knows how that's going to pan out? I've not watched the film yet, and the reviews aren't promising. And I think, but what you're going to get two sides. You are going to get films that are going to try and push the envelope in terms of stunts and effects and just ridiculous action set pieces. And then you're going to get this other side, which is going to be more, say, the climax of Civil War, where it's going to be much more character-driven. One reason you care so much about the Battle of Hogwarts in Deathly Hallows Part 2 is because these are environments that you've literally spent your childhood in, seeing get completely destroyed and characters you've grown attached to for years getting killed. I think you're going to see development on those two sides, and depending on what mood you're in will depend on which one you enjoy the most. It's a awkward answer to a question, but hopefully I've delivered a good one or an adequate one for you, Anne. Our next question comes from in previous I just started reading the question instead of who it was from. What am I on? The question comes from Sir Dean Jones of Film Brits, who says, in previous episodes of the podcast, Thunderbirds has been mentioned. My question this week is, do you think a live-action movie will ever work? Whilst the 2004 film is something of a guilty pleasure for me, mainly because of the busted track, it wasn't very good. I think Thunderbirds can be done in live action, absolutely, because the thing about Gerry Anderson puppet shows was that they were trying to be live action, but the worlds were so big and that the effects just weren't there, and the sets were so complicated. Most of Gerry Anderson's stuff was set in a high-tech future, so they literally just couldn't be done in live action. The technology wasn't there. Now we are at that point. You could do shows like Joe 90, or Stingray, or Thunderbirds, or Captain Scarlet. You can do these shows in live action, and I do think the aesthetics are there. The Thunderbirds 2004 film is one of the most disappointing movies I have ever watched, because in the 90s and early 2000s, I was huge on Thunderbirds, and I was hyped for the film, and it was basically just Spy Kids. I think if you make a Thunderbirds live action film that is Thunderbirds and not Spy Kids, it can absolutely work. The special effects in the Thunderbirds film, yeah, a bit cartoony, but the aesthetic works. These animatronics, these puppets, these models, they do translate to live action. They are convincing. They look good, and there are awesome set pieces to be made with them. And the opening rescue sequence on the oil rig is a really good set piece in the Thunderbirds movie. And just seeing these live action or CGI machines, the Thunderbird machines, just gathering around London towards the end of the film, it works. The aesthetic is there. Just don't turn it into Spy Kids. I think it's kind of a simple answer, Dean, and so I apologise for that because I tried to elaborate more in these Patreon questions. But yeah, I think almost everything in Gerry Anderson's catalogue library of work could work. Captain Scarlet, Stingray could absolutely work. I think that with Thunderbirds Are Go being a success, maybe they should try Stingray. Maybe they could try something like that. I wouldn't object to them making a CGI film in the vein of Thunderbirds Are Go, but in terms of your question, I think that a live-action movie will probably never happen again after the 2004 film, but it can work. So some things just translate better to live-action better than others. Like, I think that Dragon Ball Z does not necessarily translate to live-action, but something like Thunderbirds, with an aesthetic deeply rooted in like the puppets, they were real puppets in front of real sets, in front of real life cameras. They weren't digital creations. It's a live action aesthetic. It works. It fits. It's a natural fit at that. Whereas something like, say, I don't know, Peppa Pig, off the top of my head, or Dragon Ball Z, whose roots are firmly in the animated format, don't work in live action, or at least if they are going to work, they need a lot of retooling. I think Thunderbirds doesn't need a lot of retooling. Next question comes from George, who asks, as the holiday season is coming up, it is likely that most of us will be watching films together with friends or family, whether it is new films in the cinema or catching up on previous films on TV. With this in mind, what films do you feel are enjoyable watching with friends/family during Christmas? The films don't have to be related to Christmas or holidays. Okay, so animated films are a real easy sell, even if they're not animated, like, say, Shrek 2, any of the Toy Story, any of the Pixar films, really. I think any Disney film, if it's set at winter, coincidentally, like, say, Beauty and the Beast, it absolutely can work. But if we're going just for Christmas films, It's a Wonderful Life is essential Christmas Eve viewing. Every year, we watch on Christmas Eve, and then me and my brother go into the other room to watch Muppets Christmas Carol. I'm not going to be seeing my brother on Christmas Eve. I'm going to be seeing him between Boxing Day and the New Year, and seeing him again on the New Year, because the family's all scattered about. So who knows what's going to be happening in terms of what we'll be watching this year. But It's a Wonderful Life is always essential. Me and my girlfriend watched The Nightmare Before Christmas at the cinema a couple of weeks ago, because AMC were doing some £4 tickets for Christmas films. It was awesome. There was only like 3 or 4 of us in the cinema. It was amazing. And AMC, in Manchester at least, they do free popcorn and drink refunds, which is amazing. So Nightmare Before Christmas, any time between Halloween and Christmas as well. But in terms of Christmas Day stuff, Muppets Christmas Carol is such a Christmas Eve nighttime film. And maybe it's just because me and my brother always watched it at night, and it would probably, like, watching that film would always usher in midnight to Christmas Day, so maybe it's just fine-tuned into my brain. But I can't really imagine watching Christmas Carol on Christmas Day. I think that transitioning from Christmas Eve to Christmas Day, much like the story of Ebenezer Scrooge does in the source material or like on the films, on film and everything, because it starts on Christmas Eve and then it ends on Christmas Day. That transition is really natural. It just works for me that way. Arthur Christmas is just really, 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 really special and awesome. The Wallace and Gromit films are really agreeable as well. Something like, say, Shaun the Sheep. I can imagine that being, even though it's not Christmas related at all, stop motion just feels really, really special at Christmas. I don't exactly know why or how that works, but hey, it just has that feel to it. Just trying to think what else there is. The Grinch That Stole Christmas, I'm not a huge fan of it, but my girlfriend loves the film. I think she mainly admires the makeup more than anything else. So those are just a couple of ones that I suggest. I like some of the Simpsons ones. Like, I think Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire. Is that the first episode? I think that's a pretty solid Christmas episode. I think that's a really good special. So those are just a handful of them. I can't really think of many other TV shows, but anything animated, anything by Aardman, I think, yeah, those are really safe bets to watch on Christmas, as well as, of course, Muppets Christmas Carol. Next question comes from Winter, who asks, what are your thoughts on TV shows produced by independent internet streaming services, Netflix, YouTube, etc.? Does the creative freedom allowed outweigh the decreased reach? I don't really think that Netflix and YouTube have decreased reach, because as television, I'm not going to say becomes obsolete, but becomes less necessary, becomes a bit more disposable, and we've got the omnipresent internet and Wi-Fi everywhere. I think it's a different platform, and I think that it has the capacity to reach just as many, if not more, people, particularly from younger demographics. And I think, say, like Netflix is, even though you've got shows like Daredevil or The Crown or Stranger Things, they're going to be coming to DVD eventually, so they'll still be able to reach an audience even if they don't necessarily have a subscription service. But in terms of the question, does the creative freedom allowed outweigh the decreased reach? I don't think so, because when you've got, if you can find the right niche, if you can find the right material, if you can find the right creative team, you could make a show for a smaller budget, have it only be watched by 1 million people, and still get good mileage out of it, still have a very committed audience, still have people who like it enough to buy the merchandise to watch it without pirating it, buy the DVDs year after year, and still be self-sustaining for a couple of years. I think that's very... Grace and Frankie is a Netflix show that is not a huge smash hit. It's not even out on DVD to my knowledge. At least I don't think it is. So it's something that it doesn't have a huge reach, but it's very, very honed in at an older female demographic, and because they watch it all the time on Netflix, and that content also draws them to other shows, it can have 3 or 4 seasons. It can be self-sustaining. I think when you try and make something so mainstream and trying to reach everyone, you end up reaching nobody, like, say, the Minions film or Secret Life of Pets, although that film was very, very successful, so it clearly reached a lot of people. I would take 10 oranges is the new black is, over 1 Minions. Absolutely. No, I take 1 Orange is the New Black over 10 Minions. I'm getting tired. It's Christmas Eve. Yeah, I'd absolutely take that, because and also you don't have to watch it as well. Like, you can ignore Grace and Frankie or Narcos or The Grand Tour, and they can exist, and you can just watch your own thing on Netflix. If you want to watch episode upon episode of RuPaul's Drag Race but ignore Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, that's absolutely fine. It's all about shows like streaming services like Netflix and Amazon, and also YouTube, although YouTube Red has not come to the UK, so I couldn't tell you what original content was on there from YouTube Red. It's all about having a diverse catalogue. I think if you go on a channel where everything's absolutely the same, TV is completely stagnant and it just dies. But because you have so many channels on TV, you've got all of these different outlets doing very different things, then TV becomes self-sustaining. It's only because of the numerous channels that TV is able to be as wide-reaching and as impactful and influential as it is. And when you've got shows and broadcasters like Channel 4 who do a massive variety of content, as well as, say, the BBC, then those channels can be self-sustaining on their own. I think maybe if it was just the BBC and Channel 4 and ITV and Channel 5, you could probably get away with a self-sustaining TV industry. Obviously, if like Netflix, if there was no Netflix, then obviously the dynamics are different. The whole playing field is completely different, so it might not be a fair comparison. But it's all about having variety, and you could make one show that hits a demographic very hard and does very, very well, and you also have, say, the safety net of The Big Bang Theory or Doctor Who or something else a lot more mainstream to keep you going. But I'm not saying that Doctor Who is as bad as The Big Bang. Absolutely not. Big Bang Theory is just trash. But that the success of that show allows that company to do other shows that I'm presuming are funny. Let me just... The Big Bang Theory. What other shows did The Big Bang Theory do? At least the production company. Wikipedia is my friend here, absolutely. And while I look this up, I'm just going to take a quick drink. Okay, the production company is Chuck Lorre Productions. So what do they do? And I'm sure loads of people are just shouting stuff at me. So, okay, Chuck Lorre Productions. They do Mom, Mike and Molly. I'm told is good. 2.5 Men is not good. Absolutely not good. Okay, so Chuck Lorre Productions do stuff that I generally do not like or agree with. Okay, but they can do other smaller shows because they have the reliable cash cow that is The Big Bang Theory to do that. Like very much like how Illumination Entertainment are able to do able to do films like Sing or The Secret Life of Pets because they know that the Minions are going to make them $1 billion whenever they come out. So yeah, creative freedom and decreased reach don't necessarily have to they don't have to conflict with each other. They can work in harmony as long as the platform doing it is well structured enough. I'm all bunged up. I think it's probably what happens when I record too much in this room. And the final question comes from Edward Sweet, who says, what are your favourite action sequences in movies? You've mentioned the church scene in Kingsman, the airport scene in Civil War, and the train sequence in Spider-Man 2, but what are some of your other favourites? I've already mentioned the train scene in Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers, which is amazing. A couple of that spring to mind, other than the ones that you've mentioned. There's the great sequence in Casino Royale, which is the parkour sequence when they're in the construction site. I think it's just an incredible set piece. It's so good that they just tried to blatantly rip it off in Quantum of Solace to not quite as much success. And I think Skyfall has a really awesome set piece when they're in the London Underground. It's not really so much an action sequence, it's just a pulse-pounding, brisk walk chase, and I think it's really, really... I've talked about it a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. I think it's when Sir Dean Jones asked a Bond-related question, and I just talked about all of the subtext in that scene, so just go listen to that one again. And when I think of other action sequences, you've got... what else have you got? You've got the Lord of the Rings. You've got basically anything from that film, in terms of, say, the Battle of Helm's Deep or the Battle of Minas Tirith. Incredibly tense sequences. GoldenEye, the tank sequence in GoldenEye. I think that's so much fun, and the music kicks in at just the right moment when he's in the tank and then he goes through the statue, goes through the wall, and causes the guys in the Jeep to crash into the canal. It's a really fun action set piece. I think the chariot race in Ben-Hur, you can call that an action sequence. I think that's a really awesome sequence. Like you said, Spider-Man 2. One that doesn't get nearly enough credit, the crane sequence in Terminator 3. I think that's an outstanding set piece. I think that the sound and the visual effects were way ahead of their time in that sequence. In that sequence alone, it's absolutely immense. And the way that they take the crane down, it is just it's a fist pump moment. It's a moment that just makes you just watch the screen slack-jawed while popcorn falls out of your hand. It's just a terrific set piece, and it doesn't get nearly enough credit. There's the hammer scene in Oldboy, which is done more or less in one take, which is just intense and thrilling as hell. I like the scene in the Beehive in The World's End. I think that's just a really, really fun, inventive set piece where it takes inspiration from drunken kung fu movies that Jackie Chan was really famous for. just trying. Even though Star Wars Episode 3 is not a good film, the opening rescue sequence is simple. It's by the book in terms of just good storytelling, as opposed to a lot more experimental stuff that George Lucas was doing, if you can call it experimental stuff. That's a sequence I hugely enjoy. Terminator 2, the fight between the T-1000 and the T-101 in the steel plant, when the T-1000 is just completely wiping the floor with Schwarzenegger. That's a terrifying set piece. I'm trying to think more of horror films, if there's any good action set pieces in that, because they're more kind of... There's a couple of segments or moments, but I can't really think of any full-on action set pieces in a horror film. Of course, when you think of comic book films, the Incredible Hulk fight between... the fight between Hulk and Abomination, the music in that sequence is just jaw-droppingly awesome. The scene in Iron Man 3 when he's with all of the other suits, that's really inventive and fun. And I think how he just goes between all the different suits flawlessly is really, really inventive. Captain America the Winter Soldier, when they're on the freeway, and it's the minute and a half that they're fighting, and there's very little music in the background, and he puts the knife through the car and then runs it across trying to stab him, and the way how there's relatively little music, but it's all about the sound effects and the editing. That sequence has been edited to perfection. X-Men 2, when Nightcrawler breaks into the White House and almost assassinates the president. There's a lot of sequences to choose from, and I think I've only named just a handful of them here, but those are some of my favourites. But of course, like the church scene in Kingsman, train sequence in Spider-Man 2, and the airport scene in Civil War, I guess some of the best of all time in my opinion, and a lot of that probably does come from modern sensibilities, and the fact that they connected with me at a younger age as opposed to some older films that may be just as deserving. But those are just a handful of them. So that's the end of the podcast, nearly at an hour, and I've got to head off to do some driving to prepare for Christmas. So if you liked this podcast, if you're listening to it on YouTube or on iTunes or whatever, if you could leave a comment or a review, I'd massively appreciate it. And you can also, like the patrons who I've just answered questions for, you can also financially support my content, whether it's my written reviews on my website or my YouTube stuff or this podcast. You can go on www.patreon.com/Trilby and become a sponsor, or write some questions or suggest some topics that I will read out every single week. I'd massively appreciate the support, and I of course massively appreciate my patrons who do keep the lights on here. You can subscribe to me on YouTube at Trilby Reviews, follow me on Twitter at Trilby Reviews, and follow me on Facebook at Mr. TARDIS Reviews. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Hopefully I will speak to you all before the end of the year, and have a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.